Hi, everyone. Good news, it's an easy story to tell, so the fact that the last guys went over a few minutes doesn't worry me. We're a critical metals focused company, maybe critical metals focused before it was cool. I was actually looking up yesterday Google Trends to look at when the inflection point was in that search term, and it was the very end of 2021. And I think that the search counts for critical metals or critical minerals has about quintupled since then on average. We arranged our second critical metal project, a tungsten project, just before that and started to kick off our process of purchasing that, which finally closed 18 months later. But, I was warned that the slides might not work here. There we go. Okay, here we go. So to kind of kick things off, I think the most recent news that would catch people's attention here is that in December, we had a $35 million investment, 20 million of which came from the Lundin family, a bunch of which came from Teck Resources, the world's third largest zinc miner. We had participation of Larry Childress, a sophisticated and large investor out of the US. Management team put a bunch of money in, and really that launched us into a multi-year strategy to advance, de-risk, and expand our projects. And really was a pretty massive endorsement. I mean, look, nobody in this industry has a perfect track record. It's fraught with risk. But Teck understands a lot about zinc projects. Lundin family, obviously with Lundin Mining, also understands zinc, but also understands the value of patience in realizing value. And so that endorsement from them was huge. And really, we have 3 projects. I'm going to touch on 2 today, but the critical ones are Macmillan Pass zinc project and our Mactung tungsten project, which not coincidentally are immediately adjacent to each other. So this is Eastern Yukon Territory, Canada. Home of the Yukon Gold Rush, and storied for that, but actually has exported a higher dollar value of zinc in its history than it has gold. And this came largely from the Faro mine, which was once the world's largest zinc mine. So, this is a territory, the Selwyn Basin, the part of Yukon that we're in, well known for zinc, and somewhere that we've made excellent progress in exploring and advancing our projects. We understand that although the project is remote and people might get anxiety about infrastructure up there, we do have a road to the project. We do have access to deep sea port in Alaska and access to rail in northern British Columbia, which gives us a variety of options in terms of smelter access. Kind of start at Macmillan Pass, which is our nearest and dearest to the heart, maybe. I think it depends on which investor you talk to. This was the original project that the company was launched on. What we saw was the Tom and Jason deposits, which you see in the lower right there. That was 2 projects that had sat within Hud Bay for, depending on exactly the date you count, something for 40 to 70 years, and hadn't any work done on them since about 1991. We made an effort to purchase those off them and succeeded in late 2016 and went public with those in mid 2017. So the resource you see there, that was published in 2018, so that was kind of our inaugural resources, Fireweed. Like, look, hey, we bought these 2 deposits off Hud Bay, we'll put out a new resource, and it was pretty splashy. So in context, that kind of 11 million tons indicated and 39.5 million tons inferred at around that 10% equivalent kind of made this top 15-ish undeveloped zinc projects in the world, pretty great grade for an undeveloped zinc project, and really caught everyone's attention. It was a very well-received resource. But not to be done there. We understood that the thinking and the science around the genesis of these deposits was, if not wrong, it was incomplete. So we understood that there was a large district scale fault here that was essential for the formation of these deposits. We thought Tom and Jason were more than just a little bit related, and we thought there would be a trend kind of heading west by northwest here. So we acquired what was initially 50 square kilometers of ground, expanded it to 940 square kilometers, and made some substantial exploration success up this corridor. And look, I'm not going to read out every drill result here, but these sort of 24% zinc over 10 meters, 21% zinc over 16 meters, 212 meters of 4.5% zinc from surface, yada yada yada, and this accumulating in the best ever hole in the project, 12% zinc over 124 meters. In terms of grade width, that's not just the best hole on the project. That's actually the best zinc intersection on a greenfield zinc project in the world for at least 15 years. And then another great intersection there, 15% lead, 14%, 15% zinc, 14% lead, and 180 grams silver over 40 meters true width at Tom. So what do all these amazing intersections have in common? None of them are included in that 2018 resource. So that 2018 resource is a very small piece of the property, very small piece of the metal endowment. And as I said, this is a project initially drilled, the Tom deposit discovered in 1951, first drill holes that year, hundreds of drill holes across this project. 6 of the top 10 drill holes all time on this project were last year. So when I say our geological understanding of the project is improving and that we're getting better at targeting, it is very clearly evidenced with what we're intersecting. So we kind of think in context, this is the global selection of zinc projects we have. You see Macmillan Pass kind of in the left there on the bottom, so pretty good, over 4 million tons contained metal. You see that not a lot of projects, have more contained metal than that. But that was the 2018 resource. So when you think about the quantum of potential improvement, with all those additional discoveries, with the addition of the boundary zone where we've hit the best ever drill intersection on the project, you start to understand that the next resource is not 10% larger, it's not 20% larger. We're talking about, triple digit improvements in resource. So you start to eye things like the Taylor Hermosa project, which was sold for $2 billion in 2018. And you think like, okay, our next resource is going to be in the quantum of that, and I think that we're eventually going to overtake that resource in terms of endowment. And that was the largest takeout of a single asset junior mining company for at least the last 10 years. So, there's all these jokes about zinc stinks, lead's dead, but that was a bigger takeout than Great Bear, right? So, we can like to think that zinc is boring, but $2.1 billion is not boring. Right, and then we think about Garpenberg in Sweden. This is one of Boliden's flagship assets. The revitalization of Garpenberg basically saved Boliden. And what I've plotted there is their current resource plus all historic production. So when you see that project, which is an amazing mine, by the way, that I had the opportunity to tour a week ago, and you think that saved Boliden and made part of what made Boliden, the new Boliden, the company that it is today and the low-cost producer that it is today, and we were going to massively overshoot that with our next resource, you begin to understand that Macmillan Pass has the opportunity to be a company maker as well. So a lot of this, without belaboring getting into details on the geological points, is because of a key part of the project that we acquired after when we launched, and in the middle of the project in the boundary zone area. So, the old historic resource or historic intersections here drilled by Kamenko is, most recently 1981. At the time, they were hitting these very broad, low-grade intersections, 200, 300 meters of 1.5% zinc. This is not what you would call ore grade, but it was certainly evidence of an interesting system there. So we built on their knowledge, we purchased it off them for peanuts, built on their knowledge, and made a significant discovery at Boundary West. And so you can see a cross-section there, and again, we don't need to talk about the geological details, but importantly, we had this theory about how Boundary Main looked like a component of Red Dog while missing the real guts of Red Dog, the massive sulfides of Red Dog. So we turned around a theory that if we could find a barite horizon nearby, maybe it's chemically replaced with massive sulfides, as happens at Red Dog, and maybe we can find similar grades and scale here. So we turned around this theory to a gravity survey, to a field level map, to a target, to a drill hole, to a discovery at Boundary West in about 4 months. And initially it was 4.5% zinc. Well, that's no Red Dog, unfortunately. Then the next year, okay, now we're hitting 10% zinc. Oh, 24% zinc in a parallel horizon. Oh, then 2022, 12% zinc over 124 meters. So now we're thinking, okay, this is starting to get a lot more interesting. And each year, the drill holes better than the year before. And ultimately, we see Boundary Main and Boundary West perhaps part of the same system. Almost undoubtedly part of the same system, and both vectoring towards a potential untested feeder zone in the middle there. So really what we're going to be getting starting in our drilling this year is right in this area, trying to explore, if we can continue that 4-year trend of better drill results than the year before, then there's some amazing potential to be tapped there. And all of this, 4 known zones, Tom, adjacent, end zone, boundary, signs of at least 7 more. So a lot of juniors talk smack about having a district scale opportunity. This is a district. There are 4 deposits. There are potentially a dozen more. This is a project that will launch with a 20-year reserve as a mine, but will operate for 100 years, right? So this is exactly the sort of thing that the majors crave. So I think, and certainly the Lundin family thinks, and Teck is evidenced by the fact that after selling us a key component of the project, they then followed it up with $8 million of investment over the years. Teck feels as well that this is a preeminent zinc district that's emerging here. So, not to rest there, we purchased the Mactung project, which really, when I thought about the sort of things I would like to do, we talked about the emergence of critical minerals. But when we decided to go down the path to purchase this, I felt I began to wonder if I was a masochist. Like, did I really want to get involved in a project with a metal even more niche than zinc? I joke that for those who are country music fans, Johnny Cash has the song "A Boy Named Sue," about a man who's named Sue and how it makes him tough because he gets constantly mocked for this. And I say, CEOs of zinc companies are the mining equivalent of the boy named Sue. Because you come to a conference like this, you send everyone a meeting request, and it's one after another. Sorry, not interested in zinc. Sorry, not interested in zinc. Only care about gold, maybe sometimes copper. So you have to work 3 times as hard as a zinc CEO. And so picking up a tungsten project, even more niche, right? Yet we timed it almost perfectly because the emergence of the critical mineral trend is really just now happening, and it is so much bigger than it was when we really kicked off that process in late 2021. And tungsten specifically, this is a bit like rare earths. I heard from an ex-DOD guy in the US that he described it as having all the imperatives of the rare earths market with 3% of the attention. China controls 85% of mine supply, not processing, mine supply. And the US has just dictated that all US defense contractors cannot source tungsten from Russia or China anywhere in that value chain, right? And so they now have a much, 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 much narrower selection of mines to choose from. So, this is like, the world's tungsten projects, obviously a lot of Chinese names there, and you can see broadly, as it gets higher grade along the bottom, it tends to be much smaller projects in terms of contained metal, and the projects with a lot of contained metal tend to be much lower grade, big low-grade pigs, right? So, we bought Mactung. Well, where does Mactung sit on this? It is there. It is literally without a peer, right? That this is a peerless project without comparables. There is nothing that has comparable grade that is anywhere near the contained metal, and nothing that has anywhere near the contained metal that has anything like this grade. So this is the freakish outlier in the tungsten space. This was meant to be the flagship asset, the crown jewel, the company maker for North American tungsten, who unfortunately went out of business just as they had completed the feasibility study, just as they had taken it through the environmental assessment and got a positive recommendation to proceed. China flooded the market, put them out of business on the basis of their other mine, and this project ended up in the hands of the government for basically 7 years before they agreed to sell it to us. And that was a 7-year process of us lobbying them to not attach it to the old defunct mine, which is about 300 kilometers south of this project, because we thought it was a boat anchor. We didn't think there was any blood left to get from that stone. So after a 7-year lobbying effort, they agreed to sell it to us. There was no open process for this. And the reason there was no open process for this, and the reason we got it for such a good price, was because the Yukon is a small place. This is an area, Yukon is probably 2/3 the size of Germany, but has a population of 40,000 people. Northwest Territories next door, with government also involved there. Northwest Territories probably several magnitudes larger than Germany, also about 40, 50,000 people, right? So when you, like Fireweed, you have a reputation in those areas, when the government knows you, when you have a track record of positive relationships with Indigenous peoples, the government comes directly to you because you already own the ground next door and they sell it to you. And so at PDAC in Toronto, the world's biggest mining conference, we managed to announce this acquisition 2 days before it, right? Total coincidence, right? So we had the big splashy news to walk around the conference, and I had one guy corner me and swear at me. And he said he was gonna effing sue me, and he was gonna sue the government because they should have gone to open process and they would have outbid us. And I said to save your money and buy Fireweed shares. Right, so that's perhaps the lesson. Save your money, buy Fireweed shares, right? There's a bull market coming. It's not just critical metals, it is all metals. There's been a massive underinvestment for a decade. Zinc and tungsten, specific imperatives that make them unique cases. We have, with tungsten, there is no arguing it is the best tungsten deposit in the world. That is, period. With zinc, we have an emerging preeminent zinc district that is going to be coveted by the world's largest zinc producers. We have backing, the Lundin family. There's no question about our ability to raise money going forward. And ultimately, we have a 2023, the drill program this year, going to be larger than the last 4 years combined, our biggest ever drill program on the project by a massive margin. This is the inflection point for Fireweed, and we hope you join us on this journey. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brandon. Great presentation. I love just the style and energy. Shareholder as well, so take it as you may. And I've been to the project a few times, so it's fantastic. It shows well. We have time for one question real quick before we have to move on. Do we have any questions for Brandon? Fabi.
For the Mactung project, what sort of pricing assumptions were made to get the, I think you said feasibility study? And how does that compare to the price?
Yeah, so it's challenging. I mean, they used a lower price than now. The current price is $350 US per MTU, which is 10 kilos of tungstate, right? Like is, niche metal, we have some niche weird unit, right? I think they used 300 in the past one. Now, the spot market cannot trade for months, right? And so this is the challenge of tungsten is that the quoted spot price can be as good as meaningless. So we know that long-term contracts, you can get a premium to that. We know that that's going to be even more so as a Western supplier. What exactly that amounts to, I do not know. And that's the challenge of doing an economic study, is that what price do I use? Do I use a made-up price based on what I think I can achieve? Do I use the quoted price, which is probably under? We don't know, right? And we do know that the Chinese ability to influence the price means that we're going to seek insulation from the government. So in Korea, the Korean government has agreed to basically put a price floor on a potential mine there, which is to say if the price goes below a certain amount, they'll make up the difference in cash, right? So this is, look, the Canadian government can promise to sue China under WTO if they, engage in anti-competitive behaviors. That's wonderful. Maybe they'll win. It's too late. I'd be bankrupt, right? So what we understand is that if the Western governments are serious about critical minerals, that they need to be proactive in defending Western producers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon.